from the Workplace Ninja Summit in Luzerne. Highlights, insights, and simply interesting talks. This is the Workplace Ninja Podcast.
So welcome on the Workplace Ninja Summit 2024 podcast recordings. And it's the third day that we're here, 2.5 days. We have already had 2.5 days. My name is Frans Oudendorp. I have with me, they are joking already on that, the dinosaurs on community, so to say, John Craddock and Andy Malone. So please welcome.
Well, thank you for having us here.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah,
that was good.
Nice. And John, we know each other already for a few years. What are you doing in the normal day job?
So, normal day job. Officially, I'm in identity and I was doing identity and infrastructure, but I do identity and security. That's my main speciality. And of course, I've actually worked with the likes of Okta and various other identity providers, but now my main focus is on Entra ID.
Yeah. So let's talk about identity as well. And I think, Andy, for you, it's more or less the same from an expertise perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been security MVP for a number of years, and I love identity. It's one of the main focuses of my job. I'm an instructor. I train a lot of people in the Nordics at the moment. Yep. And in my, I was going to say in my spare time, I also run a YouTube channel, but I don't have much spare time.
Yeah, so you're aware of the cameras that we have and we were talking about. But that's fun, doing stuff.
It is.
Yeah,
it is.
And give learning material into the world, helping the community to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I started in COVID.
Yep.
And it's just grown, and it's been very enjoyable, and it's quite rewarding, especially when you get nice comments back from people that have got good jobs because of them.
Yeah,
you know. So.
And I love that you here both on the table to talk about identity. You have not done a session together, so you then both have 2 sessions on your own.
We do.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. I start with Andy. Andy, what kind of sessions did you do on this conference?
Okay, this conference I did a session on passkeys. It's an important technology, and the idea is that it helps us eliminate usernames and passwords. So obviously defense against the kinds of phishing attacks and ultimately, adversary in the middle attacks. And the second one I did was today, and that was on guest and external access, all the different methods of external access in Entra. That was fun.
And talking about external access, how difficult is it to defend them?
To defend them, again, it's all about planning. I think everything starts at the top with a good security policy. And if you've got good security procedures, you translate those security procedures into the solutions that are within Microsoft Entra, conditional access, phishing resistant credentials. And of course, then you've got the whole Defender suite of technologies built in there as well. So I think it all comes from the top, really.
Yeah. And John, what kind of sessions did you do?
Well, I chose 2 very sort of deep dive sessions, and one of the things that I've been involved in over the years, and I still get a number of gigs on, is just sorting out people's Kerberos issues. And
still?
Still. And that's the interesting, it's still. But actually, Kerberos is alive and kicking in the cloud, and it's used when you're going from a cloud identity to actually, when you've authenticated with the cloud identity. When you go to on-prem, we need the ability to actually get Kerberos tickets on-prem. And equally well, if you're on-prem and you are just domain joined and you want single sign-on into the cloud, we need a solution for that as well. And that's using Kerberos. So there are about sort of 5 or 6 different ways that Kerberos is still very much used in the cloud. And what I wanted to do was demystify that. And Microsoft talk about things like partial TGTs, or they used to. And then it became named as Cloud Trust.
Yeah.
So exactly what is a Cloud Trust? What is a partial TGT? How do they work? That's what I'm saying. And it was pretty deep. And I was using Fiddler traces, and I was also using Wireshark to really show that you can see what's going on. So there was a sort of troubleshooting element of that. And then today I did a session on OpenID Connect and OAuth 2, and really how it works and what the protocols are there for. I mean, a lot of people think, oh, OAuth 2, it's an authentication protocol. Absolutely, it's not. It's an authorization protocol. Yeah. But exactly how does it work? How does the client machine interact with Entra ID? And how do you troubleshoot it? Again, there are certain techniques you can use, and that's what I was sort of trying to demystify. So, you know, I think one of my sessions was intermediate. I think they were probably both advanced deep dives, but it said intermediate in the words, but I think they were very much appreciated. Well, I know they were, because lots of people came up to me afterwards and said how much they enjoyed the sessions.
Yeah.
So that was fun, and I really like the deep dives. I love the technology. And what I love is the protocols. I've always enjoyed network protocols because it does exactly what you expect it to do. The problem is you misconfigure it, it does exactly what you don't expect it to. And what I wanted to try and do was sort of point people in the right direction to manage the troubleshooting on that.
Yeah. And I think talking about that, what was the main message that you would try to give to people? Is that it's easy to do and to troubleshoot if you know what you're doing, or what kind of message was behind it?
I think the real message is, look, it's quite possible to troubleshoot these things, because normally it's sort of, people haven't got a clue. And what happens constantly, and I see it happening constantly, is people try out other things. And they try this, they try that, they try something else. And before you know it, they've made all sorts of configuration changes, which is a complete security nightmare. They don't really remember what they've done, all right? And they try it and try it and try it, and it might work. Yep. And this was very, very typical in Kerberos days. We used to call it the Kerberos coffee break. So you would try something, it didn't work. You try something else, it didn't work. You try something else, it didn't work. Try something else, it didn't work. And then you go, let's go and get a coffee. 15 minutes you come back, later you come back, and it works. Yeah. And you go, we must have done something right. But actually what it was cache timing out. Yeah. And there was a negatively cache component. And actually, if you know that that's the problem, you can flush the cache. You didn't used to be able to flush the cache, but now you can. And what I really want to show people is they can do this. And I have the same philosophy in when I'm consulting, is all about educating the customer to saying, look, I'm here as a consultant, but look, let's really look at how things work. And strangely enough, I've explained sometimes how things work. They say, but could you come in and fix it for us? Yeah, and I always enjoy that bit. Yeah.
Talking about passkeys, you did a session on that, Andy. I know Microsoft is pushing us forward to enforce multi-factor on all the portals, and that will be extending in, I guess it's January that is extending to the APIs as well. Can passkeys play a role in the area as well?
Oh, huge. I mean, passkeys, I think with identity, and again, it's not just Microsoft. We have to somehow move people away from usernames and passwords, and especially in hybrid environments. As John was saying, hybrid environments. So many customers out there are still using those older technologies, and if we have something that can encourage people to move away from that. And it was interesting that yesterday we were talking about in fact, we were having a conversation with a few folks in the evening, and they were saying that it's amazing how many people are in hybrid with Entra, but they still use on-premises workstations. And you think, well, why on earth are they still using those workstations? And more often than not, it's because they're using older applications and so on. So the longer that we cling on to those older technologies, the more security, ultimately, the more security risks that we're going to have. So what I was trying to do was encourage people to really kind of look at passkeys as a solution. And it's so nice now that, yes, you've still got the device-bound passkeys, but we've also got those syncable passkeys as well, which just really opens up a whole new world in the fact that they can sync with things like the Apple Keychain and Azure Key Vault and things like that, and you can use these on multiple devices. And I think that's a real win-win. And also, it's now supported in all the Windows clients. I think, again, a great way forward for people.
Yeah, I'm talking back on a bit on Kerberos. I have a lot of conversations on this table in this day and in the past few days on moving to cloud native.
Yeah.
And the issue that legacy technology is there. Are the ingredients are there already to make that shift in a better way?
Oh, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. The only reason why people stay on premises is we have some network shares, right? Well, John's session yesterday, SMB shares in the cloud, no problem. We can take care of that now. What's the other reason? Group policy. Something like 96% of group policy settings are now covered in Intune. So again, that shouldn't be a gate to stop us moving forward with those machines into the cloud. And again, sometimes it's just the fear of letting go of what we know and what we trust. Yeah. And occasionally, sometimes we just need to do that and take that leap forward.
I think there are a lot of customers, especially larger customers, who have some idiosyncrasies that are really difficult to migrate straight into the cloud. Yeah. And we have to be able to deal with that. But interestingly enough, it might not be documented, but quite often there are little tweaks you can do to accommodate their particular needs. And you do find some strange things that you wouldn't expect to happen. But if you actually understand what's happening under the underlying technology, you can normally find a way of solving most things. And I think, we will be at some stage migrated, so no longer will we be hybrid. But, there's interesting things. If you're a hybrid user and you've been synchronized into the cloud, and maybe once you become a cloud-only user, you want to get rid of a lot of the things that synchronize, but they're not in writable attributes. So how do you deal with that? But there are ways around that. I think the other thing is that, MFA and Microsoft have been saying for years now, I think, 99.9% of attacks are removed by MFA. I think what is absolutely crucial these days is phishing-resistant MFA. Yep. So if you've got a man in the middle, you can actually you can't do a man-in-the-middle attack if you're using a FIDO2 key or you're using a pass key. Yep. Just purely by the way that they work, that the actual origin is taken. So if you've got an intercept, let's say you're going to Microsoft login, and you've got an intercept in there that is Microsoft login dot blah 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 dot hacker. That will be seen as a different origin, and you will reject the authentication request. And I think people really need to think about not just MFA, but phishing-resistant MFA. Because it's a huge attack surface at the moment.
There was one of the questions that I have written down. MFA has become fundamental part of securing identities, but what are the next steps beyond MFA in enhancing identity security? And that's exactly what you are mentioning too. But second to that, if I have an organization with a lot of people, and the balance that it's needed between strong authentication and user convenience to avoid authentication fatigue. How can we handle that? Is that what are you thinking about that?
Passkeys.
Yeah. I mean, passkeys are just so simple to use. Everybody has a phone, everybody uses a device. If not, then you can use a physical key. But the fact is that, just using it takes seconds. There's nothing to remember, no passwords to change. There's no sticky notes under the table. It's convenience. And it's so much safer than these other technologies.
And can I use password vaults, so to say?
Yeah.
I use that a lot. Can that also play a role in this area?
Absolutely.
Because the virtual passkeys can be stored that way, in my opinion.
Yes.
When looking at, everyone is talking about AI. What do you expect from AI and Entra identity in general?
Well, I think AI at the moment is a child. Yes, we're in the very early years of AI, and pretty soon it's going to be a teenager.
Yeah,
and eventually it will be smarter than us. I think we need to have, obviously, security in place. We need to have safeguards in place for AI. I mean, I've been doing quite a few of these AI roadshows with Microsoft for Copilot. And one of the messages that we're trying to get across is don't flick that switch for Copilot until you've got all those protections in place. So Microsoft Purview compliance, labeling, classification, data loss prevention policies. And I think people don't realize how much is involved in that before they flick that switch, because otherwise the chances of data leaking outside is really risky, actually.
Any thoughts from you, John?
Yeah, I mean, I find AI, ideally, looking at what's going on in your environment, there are so many signals now. And AI, it would be perfect once it's in a more mature position to really manage the signals and look for vulnerabilities, create incidents. But the problem is, I find AI, it sort of goes into fantasy mode every now and again. And I use it. I do quite a lot of. I'm not a developer. I used to be a developer. But I use code to help me troubleshoot problems, to help me test problems, and evaluate. And I find AI is an invariable tool there to really help. So I might be generating a piece of code, and I just can't get something working. So I will use something like ChatGPT, ask it a question, and then it goes and tells me I should be using this. And you go, hang on a minute, that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And then I always ask it, can you give me a link to a resource? And quite often the resources come up and they don't exist.
Yeah.
And sometimes I have arguments with AI, but I never win because it shuts me out after a while. But I find that, I had to do some Python code the other day for a particular customer. And I had no real experience of writing Python, but ChatGPT really helped me, and I actually thought I came up with some pretty good code. Well, we came up with it together, and so I treat AI as a bit of a buddy to help put me in the right direction. And but like a buddy, they don't always know what they're talking about, and that's what you've got to bear in mind. But the future it's definitely going to be AI. But as Andy says, it's in its infancy. It's a bit of a baby at the moment.
It is.
It's sort of moving towards a teenager because it becomes stroppy. But I suppose it could be a terrible twos, and it could be tantrums it's having. But it's obviously definitely here for the future, and it's an exceptionally useful tool. But it's an exceptionally useful tool today if we use it as that to augment what we're doing. I wouldn't work without ChatGPT now.
I think a good example of that would be the security Copilot. That's really good, actually, in the Defender and Sentinel space. The fact that you can look at, reverse engineer a script and you can see actually what it's supposed to be doing. Because often apps and scripts, you take a look at something and it's, this is what you think it's doing, but actually what it's really doing is over here. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Actually, I mean, if you want to know what a script's doing, rather than spending any time now looking at the script itself, just chuck it into ChatGPT. Say, what's this script up to, and what's it doing, or document this script for me, and it normally does an exceptionally good job.
I had a conversation with Merlin from Belgium, including David Segura, and that was more or less on AI and how the modern management will help. This was one of the topics that we have covered there. It's you can use it to learn what happens in a script, in a piece of code, what that piece is doing actually. That it's helping, definitely. But if we look further, you're both in the field for quite a long time. What do you expect from the next few months, year probably, on identity and identity security? It's a hard question.
That's a very hard question. I think a lot more of the same. I think we will. I mean, it's what amazes me is how well people have accepted cloud. Right, and they seem to accept it with all its vulnerabilities and idiosyncrasies. So, it's when the cloud goes down and you can't actually sign in and access your email or something along those lines, it's sort of accepted. And even if it's frustrating and terrible for the few hours that you don't have access, people forget it very quickly. And that surprised me, because people are very committed to keep moving in this direction. And I think the advantage also is because there's a lot of new innovation, a lot of new technology, although we're in a way pushing people into a much more vulnerable space, on-prem. You've got a tight perimeter around it. You've got your physical security, which is probably your building and your own data center. Yeah. What you have to realize, the physical security in the cloud is probably way better than you could implement. Definitely. So you have these really secure data centers. You've got a tremendous amount of security technology looking at what's going on. I mean, the intelligence that Microsoft is, the threat intelligence Microsoft's gaining, they're in an exemplary position because they handle so many signals, and they've got the analysis going on. They're tuning their algorithms all the time. So we're moving into an environment which, in theory, could become more and more secure. Of course, the difficulty is the more you do it, and you're using AI to help protect you, the hackers are moving into the world of using AI to attack you. Yeah. So, defending on one side and attacking on the other. So where do I see things moving? Obviously more towards the cloud. I see the on-prem disappearing at some point. There's going to be a few little things that are going to be difficult to solve. But it's a cloud future. And even if it's always wondered if somebody really, really badly got hacked. And I'm not just talking, whether it's Microsoft or it's AWS or if there's some absolute disaster that happened, would people turn away from the cloud? And the answer is probably not.
No, probably from that specific vendor, but not from the cloud.
Yeah, but would they actually move from that vendor? I mean, there have been, and I'm not going to mention names, but there have been. There's an identity provider that's been hacked a few times, and yet they still have a very large market share. Yeah. People are terribly forgiving. They remember things only for a few hours, I think.
Yeah, but what the key point is there, in my opinion, and please elaborate on that if you have another opinion. If you are open and transparent, what has been happened, and maybe not the nitty-gritty details, but if you are open, I think that's helping a lot. Having that customers on your platform.
Yeah. I mean, from a compliance perspective, they have to be open.
Yeah.
But there's ways of being open, as you say. If you keep your customers on board because you're open with them, and they realise it's a fact of life that hacking happens.
Yeah. Everyone could be involved.
Yeah.
What do you think, Andy? As a last question,
I think tech comes in waves. We've seen it. You know, we've seen how it's evolved over the years, and what I think is amazing, how an old technology like vinyl has just suddenly exploded again, and that's a perfect example of how, you know, where perhaps cloud entertainment hasn't fully worked, because people have realized, hey, I don't want to rent my music. And we may see the re-emergence of Blockbuster. Who knows?
Yeah.
You know, the fact that I want to own my movies. You know, that's going to be interesting. But I think as we move forward, AI will be huge. I think, but the day where we can have a conversation with an AI, I always remember seeing Steve Jobs. Back in 1982, there was a video, and it was his vision of an AI-generated assistant. You should see it. He's got it right down to a T. I mean, and when you look at it now, it is an iPad with AI.
You know how long that is ago?
I know. It's a long time ago.
You know, when I was born,
Well,
that was the year before.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, we're not one of the dinosaurs of IT yet.
No. But where do I see it going? Yeah, AI. I think a greater digitization. Somebody's asked me, you know, Andy, do you think we're going to have digital passports on our phones? I don't think so.
No.
I just think eventually you'll be able to go through borders and it'll all be facial recognition. You won't need to carry any, and it's already happening.
Yeah.
So I think that as a means of identity, I think that could be the way forward potentially. So that's almost like the ultimate biometric. So you simply don't need to carry anything.
But we need to secure them, and that comes with other problems probably as well.
Absolutely.
I think that's a very scary scenario.
I know,
You can
I know.
travel the world with your face, and that's it.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
Because what are you giving away to every country?
Yeah.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
let's end with that. The future is bright because a lot of things happen. I think the evolvement of technology is moving faster and faster. I think when we back in the days, while we have AD and with NTFS and all that kind of stuff and TDS, it was moving slower than nowadays. It's moving faster and faster. And to keep an eye on that, on the specific parts, it will be even harder and harder. So we need to focus. Let's see what the future brings.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining,
Absolute pleasure.
guys.
Yeah.
It was fun to have you here. This was the last recording of this day, so there will be more to come. Like and subscribe the video if you want to. If you want to know if there is a new video online, you know what to do. I say until next time. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks.